Welcome back, guys. So now we're going to install a leash plug. In the previous video we took the board all the way up to sanding the hot coat. Now we're going to install a leash plug, and I want to talk a little bit about the types of leash plugs that you can get. So I have two types here. One is this one here is from XPS, and what this will allow you to do is this one is installed before the hot coat. It's actually installed during the lamination. So you install this into the board and then you put fiberglass over it, and then when you're sanding, you sand open this opening, which then exposes, say like in this plug, the little brass bar or stainless steel bar that the rope will attach to. So that's the XPS plug type. And other companies make them sort of similar to that as well. This guy here, this one here is just a traditional kind of leash plug, and you see it's tapered to prevent pull-out. So it's got some incremented steps there. So this guy is installed after the hot coat. Typically I'd probably even install it after I'm done painting and then gloss coating, but I'm not going to do that. I want to install it now just to get it done. I'll tape over it to prevent any epoxy when I do the additional hot coat or gloss coat from filling it in. So that's what we're going to do now. And I'm also going to install in the nose just a center fin plug for a center XPS plug just for a GoPro mount. So that's this guy here, and also installed after the hot coat. So let's get to it. The tools we need: some hole saws that we can use to drill out the plug, and then also I like using a router to route out the stringer. And you could use also, there's other tools, you could use a Dremel or something if you don't have that. So it's there's a few different ways you could do this, but I like using a router. That just makes it really easy. So I'm just going to mark out roughly where I want the leash plug. You want to make sure to put it so that you have adequate amount of space in the thickness of the surfboard. I'm just going to draw this out real quick as a rough mark. Something to take into account though when you're installing this, if you have fin boxes, is you want to make sure you don't install it over the fin box, because you could possibly drill or route into the fin box. So just be cognizant of that. So I have a plywood template that I use for fin boxes and different various size plugs. So I'm going to line up this one, which is the size of the plug that I'm drilling out. Or it's almost the size. Actually, I think it's a little bit too small. I might just have to router it out a little bit because I don't have a hole exactly the same size as the plug. And I'm going to clamp this in place. I've marked out on the hole saw and marked it with some tape the depth of the plug that I want to drill down, what the depth of the plug is. Don't run your drill forward, run your drill in reverse, because we're just going to grind away at this. If you run it in forward, if the teeth on your hole saw is really aggressive, it could fetch and it could just ruin your day. So I run it in reverse and just use light pressure. Now I'm going to take my router and router out this inside part. Alright, that'll do it. I've routed it out a little bit too big, but that's okay. The epoxy will fill that in. Same thing for the front. I got the template down for the FCS plug. Run your drill in reverse. Alright, let's mix up some epoxy and get these plugs in. We need to prep the plugs before they get glassed in, or before they get epoxied in, I should say. And what we do is we just rough them up with some sandpaper. The other thing to do to the plugs is wipe it down with some acetone or rubbing alcohol to remove any residual oils, dust, dirt, anything like that, because we want a really solid bond. This is what's going to connect us to the board, so we want this really, really solid. So I'm going to mix up a little bit of epoxy for the plugs. And I have some stuff here that's called Cabosil, I believe. And what this is it thickens the epoxy. So when we're putting it into the plug, the epoxy will just be a little thicker. It'll just hold the plug nicely. It'll fill gaps. If I find I have any large gaps, I take a little bit of fiberglass and I cut up and I also stick in there as well. Now, as an aside, a lot of times they will tell you that you should use a slower hardening resin. Now, I already have a pretty slow hardening resin, or slow hardener. So, because if it kicks off too quickly, it will create a bunch of heat and it could possibly melt the foam. So just be cognizant of that. For me, it's not too critical because it's pretty cool here, so the resin probably won't kick off that quickly anyway. Okay, we'll let that one set. Let's go do the GoPro plug. Now that we've epoxied in the plug, it's time to sand off this excess. Now I'm going to do the same for the FCS plug in the nose for the GoPro mount. We'll just sand that flush. That'll do it for this video. In the next video we'll do artwork or paint, and then the video after that will be pretty near completion with doing a gloss coat on top of the paint. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you in the next video.